So, if you were watching my daily brief this morning, I was talking about how the Russians are gaining ground. They really are. There's no question about that. The Ukrainians are getting casualties out of the Russians, but they're still gaining ground. And so I saw this in Euromaidan Press. Russia advances in Ukraine at fastest rate since early 2022 invasion, according to Reuters. So I asked Greg Terry to come on and tell me what's actually happening. We don't want to be glossing over things and say, yeah, but look at all the casualties. No, they're actually giving ground. Now, Greg, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it at short notice.
You're very welcome, Prof, and thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody over the next few days here in the US.
Yeah, thank you. So I think part of this is intentional and part of this is not intentional. So tell us what's actually happening, unvarnished truth of, hey, it's really like this, or it's bad, or it's good, or it's what's going on. Just help us see in 5, 7 minutes, something like that.
Okay, well, let's start. First of all, let's start with the Kursk, and that is the Ukrainian invasion into Russia. And I want to start up there because it'll be easier for folks in their mind. And then we're just going to wrap around the front clockwise really efficiently here. So in Kursk, Ukraine is doing a good job. At the max, when they had held the most territory, it was even upwards of 1,300 square kilometers. They're now holding about 600 square kilometers
Mhm.
on average. Of course, it changes. But the reality is, this is such a vitally important mission for Ukraine. And to be honest, it is difficult. We're losing some equipment and we're losing heroes, but so vital for the war effort right now, being able to strike back into Russia, being able to
Mhm.
pull forces there. We know that North Korean troops are 100% confirmed fighting in Kursk. We know that there are logistical hubs there in that region, and
Mhm.
Ukraine doing a really good job there. Of course, that is on sovereign Russian territory. That is also assisting in relieving a little bit of pressure off the city of Sumy across the Ukrainian border. You
Right.
wrap around to Kharkiv. Kharkiv is a city that is under nonstop assault from
Hold
glide
on, before you
bombs.
go to Kharkiv,
Mhm.
let me ask you about Kursk. I saw a general saying, "Hey, look, we're actually getting many more Russian casualties than Ukrainian casualties." Now that's believable because they're fighting a defensive fight and they're gradually moving back, and they're fighting a guerrilla fight as well, rather than trying to take them on frontally. Does that sound right to you?
100%
Okay.
right, because I can also tell you that just with geography, where Ukraine is fighting there in the Kursk region. A lot of that is foresty areas and small villages and little towns. So all of that makes 100%
Okay.
percent. And that actually confirms, and this will be the bonus part here. Searsky coming out yesterday, and I covered this, and we talking about it more later. That Ukraine needs to have another counteroffensive.
Hmm.
That creates a bigger story now. We're hearing today United States pressuring Ukraine to lower the mobilization age. We're hearing Ukraine wanting to adjust how they're mobilizing. And of course, all of that is necessary for Ukraine, not only to defend on the front lines, but for a second counteroffensive. And Searsky saying we can't just continue to fight defensively. We
Hmm.
have to have some offensive movements. Now, I believe that will happen. I don't know when, where, how, but I'm glad we don't know when, where, how. Let Ukraine do it, and then let's talk about it after it begins. But that lends credence to what you're stating there. If you're on the back foot, it makes it a little bit more difficult, if not a lot more difficult. So
Yep.
that's the deal there. Now wrap around to Kharkiv. Kharkiv, unfortunately, continually under glide bomb attack. S-300, S-400 systems coming in randomly, just debilitating that city. Um, it's very sad. A lot of places being hit now are civilian targets, and it's not that that's new information, but it,
Hmm.
it's it's it seems it's picking up. Vovchansk had 5 assaults on it in the last 24 hours from Russia. Ukraine was able to withstand those. Um, who knows? Maybe Vovchansk would be an area Ukraine would want to push back. I'm not. I'm just speculating. I have no information
Yeah, we don't
whatsoever.
we don't know.
But but you never know. It could be important. Secondly, when it comes to the two cities, before we move down the actual front of Sumy and Kharkiv, this is why one of the reasons why it is so important that Ukraine has the ability now to strike Russian targets with Western weapons, because it can
Mhm.
help over time push back that equipment, those launchers, those planes that are devastating these frontline cities
That's
that are
right.
so close to the Russian border. We drop down to Kupiansk. We've got good news from Kupiansk.
Okay.
Russia had a line into the city of Kupiansk. They had pushed down the road. Ukraine had made a mistake on a rotation, kind of what happened out of Avdiivka when we lost so much ground. But Ukraine was able to stabilize it. And now Ukraine has been able to push Russia back on the northeastern side of Kupiansk and additionally set up better defensive positions where they're able to actually strike Russia as they're trying to cross rivers in different places and get strongholds and footholds
Mhm,
into Kupiansk. So Kupiansk is actually, we've got some fairly good news there. It's stabilized and Ukraine is holding that. And it's very important. City of 35,000 people, large infrastructure there needs
mhm,
to be held. Now, on the big scheme of things, is Kupiansk as important as Pokrovsk? No, but we'll talk about it in just a moment.
mhm,
Coming down, Chasiv Yar. Chasiv Yar is being turned into Vovchansk. It's being turned into Bakhmut. It's being turned into Avdiivka. We do not have good news in Chasiv Yar. Yes, Ukraine is still holding positions in Chasiv Yar. Russia is advancing, but the big problem is on the southern side of Chasiv Yar. This is the little town 12,000 population pre-war, but 8 kilometers from Konstantinivka, which is
mhm,
that circle there with Konstantinivka, Druzhkivka, Kramatorsk, and Slavyansk. Very important that Ukraine, who has the high ground, continues to hold out in Chasiv Yar as long as possible. We
mhm,
move down to Toretsk. Toretsk, Russia does have initiative in Toretsk. This is the city due south of Chasiv Yar. They
mhm,
do have an established fortification in the very center of the city, and they've taken over most of the urban type 5, 9, 14-story tall buildings, which gives them advantage. A lot of Tourette's that is not that Ukraine is holding on to is like suburban neighborhoods. So
mhm,
you're looking at the tall buildings. Russia's holding the tall buildings, but
mhm,
we're in the neighborhood. So high ground versus low ground, not the best story there. I want to come all the way down to Karakova. You and I actually did a video about the dam being blown a few weeks ago and
mhm,
how important that was as a logistical I don't want to call it a nightmare, but logistical problem for Ukraine, who was supporting the fortress city. And Kharkov is called a fortress city. They've been holding it and fighting for it, and using it uh, as a logistical hub for over 10 years. They're
mhm.
holding it. They're doing great, but all of a sudden, a lot of pressure coming on Karakova. It
Yeah.
basically is surrounded by three sides. It is a little narrow town there, and unfortunately, it's going to be very hard to hold on to Karakova.
Yeah, and they
But
wanna hold that. If they get that, then that will collapse that whole wing, from beneath by the road, right?
that semi that semicircle or whatever it is, this half thing that you see when they start surrounding towns, that then
Mhm.
becomes a straight line,
Yeah,
and that's exact. And then that would affect the southern point as well. So
and then they'll be able to roll up? Is that what's in yeah,
Correct, and then the problem there, to be honest, completely honest, and share the facts, that then would allow more troops to push in for that Pokrovsk
yeah,
prize.
and that's the ugly part of this. I mean, there's good news that you just talked about, there's bad news, and we're gonna get to more bad news, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But that's really ugly if they can capture this and then come after Pokrovsk with all guns blazing. And, so they're getting this headway because of all the meat wave attacks, right? I mean, that's really what this amounts to? Okay, keep going. I don't wanna steal your thunder.
And no, and also artillery advantage. So
Okay.
it's not just soldiers, but they also have an artillery
Yeah,
advantage,
that's
four
fair.
to
Good
one,
point.
6 to 1, which is brutal. Drones are drones, but artillery, yeah, they have advantage. So the problem is winter is now here,
Mhm,
weather getting cold, rainy, snowy, ice. And I will stick with my guns on this. Paved roads will become the pathway of movement only,
mhm,
not dirt roads, not crossing these pontoon bridges on these creeks and rivers and all of that, the paved roads. So Karakova sits on the southern paved road connecting directly to Zaporizhia. It also runs up above the Orikhiv front. And
mhm.
we're hearing, okay, well, Russia's amassing troops down below Orikhiv and on the southern side of Zaporizhia. They're going to make an assault on Zaporizhia. No, they're not.
Not with that paved
That
roads in the winter, right?
not even a remote possibility. Are they going to continue to strike Zaporizhia and try to get closer?
Sure.
Absolutely. But is Zaporizhia in any way possible to be attacked physically with forces? Absolutely not. I've personally been on the defensive lines there and the fortifications. Ukraine has done a phenomenal job down there south and east of Zaporizhia. But but um, can they get closer? Yes. So when you look at Karakova, Karakova is connected logistically with Pokrovsk and Mirnograd,
Mhm.
because the parallel road that's paved comes in from Dnipro through Pavlograd into Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. And when it comes in, that's it. From there, it loops up to Chasiv Yar,
Mhm.
Konstantinivka, Kramatorsk, and so on. And then the only other paved road that is key is the paved road connecting Pokrovsk to Andriivka and Constantinople. That is right the next couple
Yeah.
of villages over behind Karakova. So
Yeah.
you can see this connection
And then it'll
here.
keep moving that way as well and just
They
keep coming at it.
right now are not making advancements on Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. That's great news.
Yeah.
But they're making advanced on the paved road that connects Pokrovsk down to the Karakova road, and they're making advances on Karakova. If we lose some ground there or we have to back up some, that will then increase the pressure on Pokrovsk. So
Right.
that's what we'll be watching over the next few weeks.
Okay. So anything else that we need to know?
Kherson under much, much more attack. Keep your eyes on Antonivka Bridge. There is a buildup there of troops on the Russian side, artillery on the Russian side. This was a very prominent place early in the war, but
Yeah.
this is just to the east of Kherson. Kherson, unfortunately, under even more artillery and
Yeah,
shelling.
that's the human safari. I mean, that's where
Correct.
that's taking place.
And it's
Um,
increasing.
one more question I have for you, and then I understand a missile almost went to hit a dam above Kyiv. Are you aware of that? So
Yes, I've heard about that. I don't have the facts yet to confirm it, but yes, there was one.
now it didn't hit the thing, but
No, it did not.
having hit that thing would have been disastrous for Kyiv,
If
as I
it
understand. If it
if you
actually,
burst it,
yeah.
it's no different than when I'm riding on the dam in Zaporizhia. I ride back and forth across it nonstop when I'm in Zaporizhia. Russia was so close to bursting that dam. One more missile. I was
Yeah.
on it. I showed the video and I documented it. One more missile, they would have burst it. And if it would have burst, I mean, I hate to say this, but it would have made the Novakakovka disaster look like
Oh,
kindergarten. So we're talking about some serious infrastructure issues here. And since you're speaking about infrastructure, I'll close out this update for you with this. The energy grid is under intense attack right now.
sure.
Intense. When we look at the city of Ternopil a couple of days was struck. I
Mhm.
translated the mayor. I work in Ternopil. I'm in and out of that city quite a bit, and it had already kind of been teetering, and you don't hear about it because
Yeah,
it's
it's
out in the
just east of
west.
Lviv. Nobody pays attention to it.
Correct, but it's a key city with for lots of reasons that I will not make public right now. But Russia knows,
Mhm.
and that grid was hit significantly. The mayor stating this is
Yeah,
the
2 days ago,
worst.
right?
Yes, 2 days ago. This is the worst condition our city has been in since the beginning of the war with our infrastructure. We can't fix it. It's not, we can, but not immediately. It's not just our grid, but also our power creation. The United States sending over emergency help for
Mhm.
Ternopil, that tells you what you need to know.
Yeah.
It was struck, and we need to watch that because I will tell you, you're seeing an increase of drones flying nightly.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
you are, right.
you are from 25 to 35 to 40. You're now seeing up to 100. I just did a live stream with Johnny Pierce, and I explained why. A, they have that many, but on the good news, B, Ukraine developing electronic warfare where they're able actually to start controlling some of those or
Yeah,
moving them out of paths and turning them back. They have a system they developed. Some of the greatest minds in the world are there on that front line in Ukraine. So that is actually good news. But unfortunately, that means more drones are flying. And
yeah,
when more drones are flying, you're set up for more missile attacks.
yep,
Everything is connected, whether it's drones and missiles
yep,
or Kharkov and Pokrovsk. So
that's
keep
right.
our eyes on it. Some good news, some not so good news, but overall, man, they're fighting like crazy. And we're seeing some good news in supply and support coming from the United States and Europe. And I'm really proud to stand with these Ukrainians in their fight for truth and justice and freedom, not only for um, their country, but for all of us. And as this video is here around our American holiday of Thanksgiving, I'm thankful for Ukrainians today. I'm
Yeah,
thankful, and I'm thankful for what they're doing. They see the big picture, and we
yep.
will stand with them until victory.
And they've been inspiring to the world to I mean, they're really at the pointy edge of the spear on, defending democracy. Alright, thank you, Greg, I appreciate that. Folks, if you're not familiar with Greg Terry, please go over to his channel at Greg Terry Experience. and check out his videos. He's the expert here on this topic that I'm not. That's why I pull him in periodically to talk about like what is the good, the bad, and the ugly in on the front lines in Ukraine. Thank you, Greg, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Prof. Happy Thanksgiving.